Okay, so you sent over this really interesting piece this week, Colossal Biosciences, right? And their plans to, well, the headline says bring back the direwolf.
That's the one. Yeah,
Yeah.
it definitely catches the eye.
It does. And for someone like you, always looking at what's coming next, this whole de-extinction thing mixed with the latest science, I figured this would be right up your alley.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the idea of bringing back a creature like the direwolf is what's inherently fascinating, isn't it?
Totally.
But underneath that initial hook, there's some really profound stuff happening. The actual science, the technology, and, the sheer ambition behind it.
Yeah.
That's the real story, I think.
Right. So let's dive into that. For anyone listening who's maybe picturing, I don't know, Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
The article makes it clear pretty fast that it's not like that. They're not making perfect clones. Why not?
Yeah, that's key. You need a pretty much intact genetic blueprint for direct cloning, like a whole instruction manual.
Yeah.
But the direwolf samples they have, I think they mentioned one was 72,000 years old and another 13,000 from a skull fragment and a tooth.
Wow, ancient.
Exactly. So the DNA is incredibly broken down, degraded. You just don't get that complete manual. What Colossal is doing is, it's actually way more complex, maybe even more impressive. It's genome reconstruction.
Genome reconstruction. Okay, that sounds complicated.
It is.
The article said they started with only, what was it, 0.15% coverage of the genome? That sounds like almost nothing.
It's tiny. Think about trying to put together like a million-piece jigsaw puzzle, but you only start with a handful of pieces, and they're all mixed up.
Yeah, how do you even begin?
Well, that's where their tech comes in. They've developed these really advanced methods to find more tiny fragments, sequence them, and then computationally assemble them, like finding more pieces and figuring out where they fit, even without the picture on the box.
Okay.
So they won't get a 100% perfect, unbroken sequence, probably. But they've managed to increase that coverage massively, enough to identify the really important genes, the ones that made a direwolf. Oh, a direwolf.
And this ability to piece together ancient DNA, it's not just about old animals, is it?
Oh, not at all. I mean, imagine understanding how diseases evolved way back when, or finding genes for, say, climate resilience in extinct species that we could learn from now. It's got huge potential implications.
Okay, so they rebuild this partial direwolf genome. Then what? They use the gray wolf.
Exactly. The gray wolf is the closest living relative. So the idea is you identify the key genetic differences, the genes that coded for the direwolf's distinct physical traits, its phenotype.
How it looked, how it maybe behaved differently.
Right. Its size, its skull shape, that kind of thing. Then, using gene editing CRISPR, presumably, though they don't always specify the exact tools, they go into the gray wolf genome and make targeted changes, tweaking the gray wolf DNA to match those specific ancient direwolf gene versions.
So it's less like bringing something back whole and more like editing a relative to resemble it.
That's a pretty good way to think about it, yeah. Genetic tailoring.
And the article mentioned something called multiplex editing. They did, what, 20 edits at once?
Yeah. Which is wild. 15 of those were specifically swapping in these ancient DNA variants they identified.
And crucially, they said no off-target effects. Nothing got changed accidentally somewhere else.
Right. That precision is incredible. Think about it traditionally. You might make one edit, check it, make another. It's slow, painstaking work, doing 20 specific changes simultaneously, cleanly.
They use that analogy, like rebuilding 80% of a car engine overnight.
It's that kind of leap in efficiency and accuracy.
Yeah.
It really shows how sophisticated these gene editing tools are becoming.
And the potential, if you can edit that precisely.
Exactly. Think gene therapy for complex human diseases. Being able to correct multiple faulty genes at once safely, that's huge. It's moving from, a blunt instrument to incredibly fine-tuned molecular surgery.
So the goal isn't a 100% genetically identical direwolf clone.
No, probably not feasible, or even necessarily the goal.
But an animal that phenotypically looks and maybe acts like a direwolf because those key trait-determining genes have been edited in?
That's the objective, yeah. And Ben Lamb, Colossal's CEO, he makes this point in the article. He sees this as more than just a direwolf. It's a sort of landmark moment for synthetic biology.
He compared it to AI's impact on cognition.
He did. The idea that we're reaching a point where we can not just read the code of life, but actively, precisely rewrite it, engineer biology in ways we couldn't before.
So for anyone listening, it's clear this direwolf project, while cool, is kind of a showcase, a proof of concept.
Very much so, and it's not the only one they're doing either.
Right, they mentioned woolly mammoths.
Mammoths, Tasmanian tigers, the thylacine, even the dodo bird.
Wow. So it's really about building a platform, a set of tools.
I think that's exactly right. Each project tests and refines the technology. And Lamb's bigger vision, which comes through in the piece, isn't just about de-extinction. It's about using these tools for conservation.
How so?
Well, imagine being able to give endangered species a genetic boost. Maybe edit in genes for disease resistance if a population is vulnerable, or potentially even help them adapt faster to, say, climate change impacts down the line. Genetic rescue, essentially. Preventing extinctions, not just reversing them.
That's a whole other level of intervention.
It is. It raises big questions, of course.
Yeah.
But the technological capability is developing fast.
And then there's this other complete mind-bending part of their work mentioned, artificial wombs.
Yeah, that one definitely sounds like pure sci-fi, doesn't it?
A little bit. Gestating a mammal entirely outside a biological mother.
But it's a serious research track for them. They apparently have this ambitious goal, the first mammal born entirely ex-utero, outside the womb, by 2026.
2026, that's
Yeah.
incredibly soon.
It's extremely ambitious. But if they, or anyone, could achieve that reliably, think about the conservation angle again. Species that maybe have difficult pregnancies or very low reproductive rates, this could be another tool.
And obviously the article hints at the potential, human implications further down the road.
It does, and those are discussions we definitely need to have as a society. Huge ethical considerations there. But for now, the focus seems to be on the conservation applications.
What also struck me, reading about Ben Lamb, his background isn't in biology, right?
No, he's more from the tech entrepreneurial world, which is interesting.
It really highlights the entrepreneurial aspect driving this, doesn't it? It's
Yeah.
not just scientists in a lab, it's someone with a big vision, pulling resources and people together.
Absolutely. And Lamb seems very good at that, spotting the potential, building the teams. The article stresses that entrepreneurship is a team sport. And in something this complex, needing expertise from genomics, developmental biology, gene editing, computational biology, you absolutely need that strong leadership, but also those world-class scientific minds actually doing the work. He's assembling the players.
Of course, it's not all smooth sailing. They touch on public skepticism,
Yeah.
right? And managing the media, that whole New Yorker embargo thing they mentioned.
Yeah, any technology this potentially transformative is going to face scrutiny. And probably some pushback. How they communicate about it, being transparent, is going to be really important.
Especially now with concerns about, AI-generated deepfakes and disinformation. Building credibility for something this hard to believe, almost, must be a challenge.
Definitely. Trust is key when you're operating at the frontiers like this.
Okay, so let's try and crystallize this for someone listening who wanted that quick but thorough grasp of why this direwolf news matters. What are the big takeaways?
Well, first, I'd say it's this idea of genome resurrection. It's not just bringing back animals. It's this growing power to unlock ancient genetic information and potentially use it.
Right, tapping into life's history to maybe solve future problems.
Exactly. Then second, these synthetic miracles, as you might call them, that multiplex editing 20 edits, super precise. It just shows a massive jump in our ability to engineer biology.
A new level of control.
Precisely. Which opens doors in medicine, conservation, maybe even agriculture down the line.
Third takeaway.
I think it's the moonshot thinking. Tackling something that sounds almost impossible, like de-extinction, with this bold vision and cutting-edge tech, it pushes boundaries.
Makes you wonder what else might become possible, right?
It really does. Fourth, you have to include the artificial wombs. Even if it's early days, the very idea of gestation outside the body is, potentially revolutionary for conservation and raises those huge questions about reproduction itself.
A truly fundamental shift, potentially.
Potentially, yes. And finally, fifth, it really underscores team science. This isn't one lone genius. It takes diverse experts, complex coordination, strong leadership. Big science is collaborative.
That's a great summary. So, wrapping up this deep dive, it's clear the Colossal Direwolf project is way more than just, a cool headline.
Oh yeah, it's a window into some really significant advances in reading, writing, and maybe even gestating life. Genomics, gene editing, synthetic biology, all pushed forward by this really ambitious entrepreneurial drive.
And these tools, developed for de-extinction, they clearly have implications far beyond that for conservation, maybe medicine, understanding life itself.
Definitely. The potential applications are broad and, frankly, quite profound.
So maybe a final thought to leave people with. As we get better and better at manipulating biology at this really fundamental level, what are the future possibilities, or maybe the ethical lines we really need to start thinking about more seriously? Where does this capability take us next?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Hmm.
Something we'll need to grapple with as these technologies continue to accelerate. Definitely food for thought.